Hello everyone. Today we are here to discuss a very important topic for UPSC examination, that is the topic of Uniform Civil Code. Okay, UCC is a very important idea whose time has come, and we are going to discuss this UCC in terms of the recent Uttarakhand judgment in order to bring about UCC in the state. Okay, the Uttarakhand state government had started implementing UCC from the January of 27th, okay, in order to commemorate the 25th formation day of Uttarakhand, and it is being implemented by Pushkar Singh Dhami. Pushkar Singh Dhami is the person who is implementing it. So he is the Chief Minister of Uttarakhand, and in order to commemorate the 25 years of Uttarakhand state formation, so this UCC has been implemented in the state. If we look at the historical background of the idea of Uniform Civil Code, first and foremost, there was a discussion about the Uniform Civil Code in the Constituent Assembly of India. Because Civil Code as a matter before Indian independence was determined on the basis of religious laws. On the basis of religious laws itself, the civil code is determined. And if you look at the civil code, it in fact covers issues like marriage, it covers issues like divorce, it covers issues like marriage, divorce, inheritance, adoption, maintenance. All of these aspects are covered in the civil code. And prior to Indian independence, the civil code of any community is determined on the basis of religion. And the time of Indian independence, there was a lot of social reformatory zeal among the members of the Constituent Assembly. They were discussing about the Uniform Civil Code, but as the society was not ready for a Uniform Civil Code, what the Constituent Assembly did is it put the aspiration of Uniform Civil Code under Article 44 and made it part of the directive principles of state policy in India. And after it was made into directive principles of state policy, in the 1950s decade, what happened is the traditional Hindu law has been changed and a modern legal code is given to the Hindus. For the Hindu community, the civil code, it was removed from the influence of religion, and a modern civil code was given to the Hindus in the decade of 1950s, even though the original Hindu code was drafted by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, but in 1950s, in a slightly diluted format, the Hindu civil code was passed by the central government as 4 separate laws in the year 1956. And from then on, the Hindu law was more modern. It is disassociated with religion, and Hindu civ code, it in fact was in sync with the opinion of social reformation. And this way, the Hindu code, it got reformed. And the Hindu civil code, which has been enacted in the decade of 1950s, it is applicable to Buddhists, Jain, Sikhs. So all these minority communities also, the Hindu modern code was applicable. But the religion like Islam, it continued with its own religious code on the basis of the principles of Shariat. And in many respects, the principles of Shariat were not in sync with the modern democratic values of Indian society. And because of them not being in sync with the modern democratic values of Indian society, particularly the issues of halala is one issue, Idat period, maintenance only during the Idat period, triple talaq is one more issue. Then apart from triple talaq, there was the issue of polygamy, which is permitted in Islam. Then along with polygamy, there were other limitations that women are not given equal property rights in Islam. They are only given 1/3 of the ancestral property. So only a part of the ancestral property is given to them, not an equal share. So because of these reasons, the Islamic personal law, it was in variance with the values of the Constitution. It was in variance with many principles of the legal system of India, and the Uniform Civil Code, which has been included in the directive principles of state policy, there were no attempts made by the governments in order to implement them. But the Supreme Court, on multiple occasions, it has in fact asked the governments to take steps towards uniform civil code. In fact, the very first observation of the Supreme Court, it came in the famous 𝐃𝐨𝐰𝐧𝐥𝐸𝐵 judgment. Okay, and in the 𝐃𝐨𝐰𝐧𝐥𝐸𝐵 judgment itself, the Supreme Court has said that the Uniform Civil Code is something which is very essential for Indian society, but the central government is not taking any steps for the same. Then after that, the same Supreme Court, after the 𝐃𝐨𝐼𝐧𝐥𝐸𝐵 judgment, in a case which is called as National Textile workers case, also the Supreme Court reiterated the same stance. Then after that, in the famous Shah Bano judgment, also the same stance has been taken by the Supreme Court. And after the Shah Bano judgment, even in the Sarala Mudgal case also, the Supreme Court has always asked for the implementation of the Uniform Civil Code in India. And it has in fact passed many judgments compromising the principles of Sharia in order to give protection to the Muslim women. And even though the Supreme Court was saying the same, the Constitution was saying the same, lack of political will and political decisiveness on the part of the political parties led to the delay in the implementation of Uniform Civil Code. And there was, and one more thing that we need to understand is the Uniform Civil Code as an issue is part of the concurrent list of Indian Constitution, which means that both central and state governments can pass laws in order to implement the Uniform Civil Code, because Civil Code as a matter is part of the concurrent list of the Indian Constitution. And apart from this, one more thing which led to, apart from absence of political will, one more thing that led to the delay in the process of implementation of Uniform Civil Code is the fear among the minority communities that Uniform Civil Code means the imposition of the Hindu Civil Code on the Muslims. But this is a completely wrong perception, primarily because the Hindu Civil Code that is being spoken about is already a modern code unassociated with religion, in sync with the democratic and constitutional principles of India. And that is the reason why the Indian Prime Minister in last year 15th August speech, rather than talking about Uniform Civil Code, he spoke about Secular Civil Code. And the Secular Civil Code as a term, it was supposed to convince the minorities that, Uniform Civil Code doesn't mean imposition of the Hindu code on the minorities, because the Hindu religious law has long been abandoned for the matters of civil code. And even in international level also, majority of the Muslim countries themselves have moved away from the provisions of Shariat, and they have in fact implemented modern civil codes of their own. So because of all these evidences, finally the Uttarakhand government, it went for implementation of Uniform Civil Code. Under the provisions of Uniform Civil Code, a common law will guide the issues of marriage, inheritance, divorce, adoption. So in all these matters from now on, there will be a modern civil code which will be applicable to all the citizens or all the people of Uttarakhand state, irrespective of their religion. But apart from these progressive steps, one more important thing that is done by Uttarakhand government is 50% share to women in ancestral property is clearly mentioned. That is equal share to women in ancestral property. Then apart from that, the marriage, all the marriages should be registered. It has fixed the minimum age of marriage at 21 for male and 18 for female. So in all respects, it has become a modern code. And at the same time, the Uttarakhand Uniform Civil Code, it takes into cognizance a new reality of Indian society, that is with respect to live-in relationships. And when it comes to live-in relationships, the Uttarakhand Uniform Civil Code has clearly stated that all the live-in relations should be registered with a notary. And unregistered live-in relations will not be recognized, and every couple who are having a live-in relationship, within a month's time, they have to register themselves. In case of failure of registration, the live-in couple they are going to be imprisoned for 3 months of prison time, and along with that 10,000 rupees fine can be imposed on the living couple who are unregistered. And that too, in the living couple registration format, numerous rules and regulations have been set up, and these rules and regulations say that any person or any male or female between the age of 18 to 21, if they are having a live-in relationship, then okay, the notary or the person who is registering the marriage or live-in relationship, he has to notify the parents of the living couple. There is a provision for notification to the parents if the age is 18 to 21. Then apart from that, one more important provision that has been given is even homeowners also, okay, should give their house on rent to only the living couple who have been registered with the government, and all the children who are born out of live-in relationship, they will be considered as legal heirs to the couple. So all of these are important provisions which regulate the practice of live-in, okay, but there were some criticisms that it compromises the ideas of right to privacy as mentioned by the Puttaswamy judgment, but the Supreme Court will determine whether registration of live-in relationships is legally valid or not. But there are so many appreciable things in the Uniform Civil Code of Uttarakhand, and this is one minor compromise. Then over and above this, one more important thing that we need to understand is the Uniform Civil Code which has been passed by Uttarakhand, it also got the presidential assent, because in cases of laws passed by the states which are in contravention of the central law, usually even though the matter is in concurrent list, the governors will reserve the bill for presidential assent, and the president also gave her assent on the Uniform Civil Code, so which is a welcome move. More states are going to go in the same direction. Even though Uttarakhand has enacted UCC, this was not the first state in which UCC is implemented, primarily because even before integration of Goa into Indian Union, the state of Goa had a Uniform Civil Code implemented by the Portuguese. Already Uniform Civil Code is present in Goa. Now it has been extended to Uttarakhand too. And so rather than talking about Uniform Civil Code, if we call it as a secular civil code, it would be much better and more people will accept it. So on this note, let's call it a day. We'll continue the discussion on other topics, going ahead. Do subscribe to CSB IAS channel. Thank you.